Welcome, first of all. Can you talk me through your education background, how you went from kinesiology into a DPT?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I started in college, med school. A lot of medical doctors are in my family, so I wanted to follow that route. But as I got into college and got into the med school application process, I quickly realized that the profession isn't maybe as much as it once was. A lot of my uncles who had been in the doctor field, the medical field, had shifted. Wait, I need to adjust one more thing. Sorry, I
You're
totally but
good.
okay. We can start from the top too if you want.
Keep on going.
Okay. Um, so I started in physical therapy uh, after going pre-med and recognizing that the medical field wasn't really where I wanted to be. I came across a physical therapy internship, and in that internship, I saw that physical therapy was very hands-on compared to the current medical field, which is there's not a lot of time between clinician and patient. It's really short, and so whenever I saw the contrast, I recognized pretty quickly I wanted to be in person and really help people from that physical therapy space. So jumped into the application process, got accepted, went to physical therapy school in New England area outside of Boston, and then shifted quickly into practicing. So that's the journey.
I mean, you're body movement based, but in order to be the best clinician, you have to be pretty hands-on. How did that physical therapy translate into specifically breath work?
Yes. Well, physical therapy comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes. There's manual hands-on techniques, there's exercise-based physical therapy. But then once you get into the profession, what I found is that there's another category, which is the psycho-emotional components of pain, the stress component. And that's fairly easy to see whenever someone's stressed and you communicate and talk to someone, you can see that they're holding a lot more than just their injury. So as I started working with patients, it's pretty apparent most people are stressed. And it's hard to work with a patient when there's stress in between themselves and their results. So at the time, I was practicing breathwork myself. And from there, I realized, oh, this is good for my own health and well being, stress regulation. So let me just shift that into working with patients. Quickly saw that it helped. Just even a couple breaths is relaxing and able, this helps you get into the present moment. But I took it up a notch and did some more deeper, intensive breathwork practices to gain a little bit more from the breathing practice. And so it was very merged. And now I currently practice both together, but a lot of my clients are breath focused. So not from the physical therapy space, it's really in the breathwork coaching and mental performance coaching space where I do most of my work today.
Yeah. What was your first experience with mental health aside from the work that you do with breath?
Well, mental health is something that everyone deals with. And I think in our country and culture, it's seen as something that is unique to a certain population who struggle with mental health issues, maybe on the more of the mental health diagnosis side. But I always thought it was interesting that there was a separation there because as someone who didn't really have any mental health issues or diagnoses, I struggled with my mental health. And I knew that was true for everyone. And so I remember seeing statistics and research articles 3 out of 5 adults have anxiety. And then in my mind, I'm like, everyone has anxiety, everyone has stress, everyone has struggles in their thinking, and life throws all kinds of different things at you. So fairly early, even in high school and college, I was pretty awake to the fact that mental health isn't unique to significant issues. And so that opened my eyes, and it did seem like there was a gap, because if you're working in the mental health space, and I don't specifically work in the mental health space, I'm not a mental health practitioner. I like to look at the mental performance. How can we amplify the thinking mind? How can we amplify the feeling, the mind body energy connection, which is where breath really comes in beautifully. So whenever I'm working in the breathwork space, I'm not diagnosing or treating mental health issues. I'm inspiring, I'm helping people breathe into goals, aspirations, feel more confident. It's hard to take a full breath without lifting your chest, without grounding down, without embodying that breath. And when you do so, you naturally open the mind into enhanced receptivity to things. And so, um, yeah, there's a gray area in the mental health world, and I try to stay in my lane, but also expand my lane and help people understand that they're not alone when they're feeling bad.
How do you see breath work as transformative?
Yes. So breath work has been transformative for me. First, I'll speak from my own personal experience. The mind is constantly in thought. There's people who say 30,000 thoughts per day. Some people have 30,000 thoughts per hour. There's the thinking brain is an organ of thinking. And so that's a constant. And that was a constant for me and normal for me, as it is normal for everyone. But then whenever I recognized breath work as a positive tool for presence and meditation, um, all of a sudden I had a lot less busy thoughts and a lot more breathing thoughts. And that felt like a healthy exchange. So the more I focused on my breathing, the more I was focused on myself, more less I was focused on um, external thoughts that were a little bit chaotic or too much, or um, how are other people thinking about me oriented. It was really, okay, how am I feeling? What am I feeling? How am I breathing? So I was checking in with myself, and I didn't anticipate that, because as most who get into the breathwork space, they get into it from either from a goal of meditation, or they get into it from a goal of performance and doing Wim Hof Method type practices. So it's a little bit more macho breathing. But once you get through the macho breathing, fast breathing, you become more connected with slow breathing. You enhance that conscious awareness of breathing. And so that's my journey and how it's transformed me. And that's why whenever I work with individuals, it starts with mechanics, it starts with the physical body, it starts with the energetic body of breath. And from there, the teachings, the benefits come naturally. And that's one of the benefits of breath, is it's so natural that it naturally opens to other components.
I just wrote this question down as I was listening to you kind of talk through that process. How do you see the clients that you work with breathing differently or prioritizing different parts of the breath work meditation mindset experience depending on what they're dealing with? So, like, say peak performance versus grief, for
Mm,
example.
yeah, quite different breathing patterns, right? Peak performance, I think about a video that circulated in the breathwork world, and a lot of people may not be as deep in the breathing world as I am, but there was I
I
think it
like that
is
you called it the breathing world.
it's a breathing, like, I mean, I mentioned the name James Nestor, Brian McKenzie, Erwan McClure. Um, these are breathwork teachers, and most people have no idea who they are because they're not in the breath world. But if you're in the breath world, it's very clear, like, oh, those are some top breathing researchers, advocates for the profession. So there's a little breath bubble that a lot of us occupy, but most of us don't. Um, but in the Winter Olympics, there's a sport where they do the skiing. I'm going to butcher it because I'm not a winter athlete, but it's the skiing with the gun that you shoot and hit the
Biathlon.
targets. Yeah, you liked it, huh?
I like biathlon.
Biathlon, like, what a cool sport, a combination But there's a woman who they have a nice video of her just breathing so slow, not into the chest, into the diaphragm, and just controlling. So going from high heart rate, moving energy to shift down regulating, breathing slow, breathing control, controlling the breath to control the heart rate to be able to shoot accurately. It was impressive. Now, then you look at grief, which is quite the opposite. Maybe uncontrolled breath, or to control grief, nor do you want to control grief, just let it happen. But sometimes you have to when there are different things going on in your world. You need to compartmentalize a little bit and then give yourself appropriate space to grieve. But that breath is completely different. It's one that comes into the upper chest. It's more energetic. It's more emotional. So those are grief and peak performance are quite on the polar ends, but it's good to explore like those two components because those are at the most extreme versions of breath. You can find all kinds of breath in between.
What do you see as the impact of breath work on the mental wellness, mental awareness?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's the whole side that is kinesiology based. There's
Yes.
another side that I would call mental based. Where does breath work kind of sit in that middle ground?
Mm-hmm. It's quite literally the middle ground. Breath is the bridge between the mind and the body. So whenever you breathe, you're bringing in the mind psyche into the body. Whenever you breathe out, you're moving energy from the physical body out into the ether, right? But that's where the psyche, the mind occupies. And so breath is quite literally the bridge. Now, when I think about mindset and the mental, the body is just as involved as the brain and the mental. And there is a separation. Mind and body are different, but there is actually no separation. It's an illusion. So when you think about the mind, not just as the brain, but as the nervous system sits in the body, the nervous system sits in the breath, the mental follows your heart rate. Your heart is really guided by your environment or your situation or what you're doing. So if you're running and exercising, that's a practice of mindfulness and embodiment. So a lot of my teaching is trying to help people realize that there is no separation. Mind and body are one. Yet, whenever it comes to application of these practices, there's a difference. There's a huge gap. Like they are quite separate. So how do you bridge it? Practicing breath work is a great technique to bring you into the body, bring you into the mind, bring you into the mental. Um, and for me, I bridged the gap 100%. I use breath as that bridge.
When we're looking at breath kind of as that bridge between mind and body, how do you kind of transpose that onto performance, let's say pre-game routines, in-game routines? Let's kind of
Mm.
transpose that into competition.
There's a term called interoception. Have you heard of this term?
No.
Right. So there's again in the breath world, in the mind body psychophysiology world, interoception. It's becoming more and more popular because there's more research on interoception. Interoception is the ability to feel within the body. So feeling your heartbeat, feeling the breath enter and exit the lungs. Um, Proprioception is your ability to feel your body, hand, and space. Like I'm not looking at my hand, but I know what the joints are doing because there are proprioceptors in there. Chemoreception is if you hold your breath, hold your breath, hold your breath, and all of a sudden you have an internal urge to breathe. Those are chemoreceptors activating by rises in carbon dioxide that signal the brain a feeling, an inner feeling of, oh, stress, I need to breathe. Chemoreception, mechanoreception is pressure. So there's all these real receptors that we have in our body, but the process of feeling into those receptors is interoception. It's not like the umbrella term. And so all of that to say is the body is an antenna. And if you can feel your body, you can feel the things around you. And so if you look at a peak athlete or performer on a basketball court, they are very in their body. They're very present. They can feel how they're moving. They can feel how they're pushing off the ground. But through that heightened awareness of physical body self, they also feel others. They can see the floor, they can see the court, they can dictate how they're moving amongst other people. So I would highly recommend breathing practices as a form of interoception training. You're training not your brain, but you're training your brain's connection to the body. Because once you get really good at connecting to the physical body, you can translate into sport. And then once you have a ability to be like, okay, I can feel my body, you'll also gain the ability to say, oh, I'm disconnected from my body. I'm in my head. I don't even know where my feet are or my toes. How can you plant and move if you're not even feeling your feet? So a simple practice is breath to get your mind into the body, but then also take it one step deeper. Feel the feet, get into the tactile sensation of the physical, like waking up. Like okay, like I think that the slapping and the shaking kind of thing that most would see as very woo woo out there. I always thought so, but now I see that it works. So it's woo woo. It's still woo woo in my mind, but it works. It's something that is effective at getting in. And, you don't see athletes like literally doing this, but you see athletes rolling the shoulders, shaking their head, like pounding their chest, like hyping themselves up. They're not just hyping themselves up mentally, they're bringing that into their physical. So I hope that answers your question. Long-winded answer.
It did. Um, what kind of breathwork modalities are kind of in your breathwork toolbox to
Mm-hmm.
share with your clients?
Yes. So there's a few layers of toolboxes. There's a toolbox that most athletes know. It's the box breathing. In, hold, exhale, hold. Very common. Not commonly used because sometimes it doesn't work. For a lot of people, they're like, box breathing doesn't work. So you throw out the baby with the bathwater. But there's so much more than just one technique. Box breathing, 4, 7, 8 breath is normal, which is 4 second inhale, 7 second hold. 8 second exhale is a longer extended exhale that's more down regulating, relaxing. So there are these little techniques that are useful. Those are more down regulating, so slower control. But then there's Wim Hof method, which is active, so up regulation, active breathing with some breath holds, not so much at the top, more at the exhale. So that's another technique. But I mentioned the name earlier, Brian McKenzie. He's one of my breathwork mentors, highly influential in the space. He taught me methods are many, principles are few. So there's a lot of methods out there, but what principles drive the behavior of the breath technique? So once you understand the principles, and that's really what I teach is principle science-based breathing. I'm working with an individual out of Australia right now. He's from the UK but lives in Australia. His name's Martin McPhillamy. He has what's called the School of Breath Science. Um, and so I'm working with him right now, deepening the understanding of the breath science. And he's in the same philosophy. It's not about the techniques, it's about the principles. So you can take, I think there's a lot of value to box breathing and techniques, and that's the place to start. But if those aren't working for you, or they work and then you want more, there's a whole another toolbox that's exponentially bigger. Where what I practice now is called situational breathing or allostatic breath, where I can breathe in the moment and match my breath to the moment to best serve me in the moment. And so that's a combination of Wim Hof style or box breathing or something. It's more intuitive. So I'm thinking about my breath all the time versus doing a technique to get a feeling or a sensation and then being done with technique and then disconnecting. But it takes practice. It takes definitely practice to increase that awareness because the more you do it, the more your brain understands it, the more neuroplasticity takes place, the more you get familiar with the process of meditation. So if you haven't practiced meditation and you try to sit and just be still, good luck. That's why it takes time to be consistent. Um, but you have to have that goal, purpose that sticks with you throughout the process, or else you're going to toss away the practice and be like, oh, breath work does not work for me. It'll work for everyone.
I think it's so interesting when you kind of compare the process of learning how to meditate with the process of learning how to breathe. Because meditation is not necessarily intuitive, breathing is.
Mm-hmm.
How do you become so aware of your breathing that it becomes something that you're monitoring as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to just something that's happening in your body?
Yeah, no, I'm still trying to figure that out because for me, it made a lot of sense. Um, Connecting to my breath had a plethora of positive benefits. Less stressed, more present. Through breathing slower and deeper, I found that my performance elevated. I play a variety of sports. I'm an athlete. I love basketball. Um, I can tell on the court whenever I'm mouth breathing or hyperventilating, breathing too fast. It's just we have reminders all the time, but are you plugged into the reminders to breathe? A big sigh. Naturally, humans take a big sigh maybe once an hour. But if you're highly stressed or you're stuck at a job or you're here and you're like working too much, you probably sigh once every 5-10 minutes, a lot more frequent. So there's a thing where you can monitor the frequency of the breath through noticing how frequently you take a big sigh. Often I'll work with individuals and ask, how often do you sigh? And they'll be like, how'd you know I sigh a lot? I'm like, I don't, I'm just asking. But they'll say, yeah, I sigh a ton. Or my partner tells me that I'm always taking a deep breath, or my teammates saying, you're always catching your breath and breathing deep. So either we're aware of those sighs or we're not aware and others are. Regardless, the sigh is a signal from the body, please breathe, because I'm going to breathe for you. That's your body breathing for you. So if you're sighing frequently, once every 5 minutes, once every 10 minutes, I would say is considered frequently. Uh, if you're sighing frequently, your body's basically every 5-10 minutes saying, hey, wake up, alert. Are you listening to me? You need to breathe. Now, for me, my nervous system is regulated. I do a lot of breath work. I do other practices. I'm also human, so I get stressed. But because I've made that connection association, anytime I catch myself taking a deep breath, I'm like, okay, shift, nose breathing, maybe change my posture, lower, deeper. So I go into principles in that moment. I'm like, okay, thank you, brain, body, for telling me I need to breathe. I'll shift. Often, another signal to remind me to breathe is my mouth gets dry. I'm like, oh, I've been breathing through my mouth. I haven't really noticed, but I'm like busy. And okay, now I need to zip it, prioritize breathing through my nose, focus on breathing through my nose because nose breathing is superior physiologically, neurophysiologically to mouth breathing. So, how do I remember how to breathe? I listen to my body and I listen to my body through practice that helps increase interoception. So I have a little bit more of a awareness to those signals that we get all the time. And that's, I think, the goal. That's the goal that I want people to get to on their own, but it takes practice.
Let's kind of transpose that onto dynamic allostasis. Where does that fit into your practice?
Yeah. So dynamic allostasis, I would assume many haven't heard of allostasis. Allostasis is similar to homeostasis. So homeostasis is balance within the body. We know about homeostasis. We learned that in elementary school. When your body's at ease and tranquility, you're in homeostasis. Allostasis is your body's ability to find tranquility with the world around you, to stabilize during stressful moments. So whenever stress comes at you and your body feels the stress and then regulates, that's allostasis. So homeostasis, balance within the body; allostasis, balance between body and the environment and nature and things around you. And so allostasis is happening all the time, whether we're paying attention to it or not. Whenever you have excess stress, it's happening all the time. Maybe that's environmental. You're not drinking enough water and your body's kind of stressed because you're not drinking enough water, or you're not hydrated. Your body's having to work to maintain that equilibrium harder because you don't have enough water or good nutrition. Um, when you go from your body being able to handle that, which is allostasis, to having trouble working hard to create that, it's called allostatic load. So your body's working a little bit too hard to regulate, to bring a homeostasis into play. This is science class 101. I'll make it quick. Then there's something called overload. So chronic stress, chronic disease, um, whenever you aren't sleeping, insomnia. So not only are you a little bit stressed and your body's working hard, you're excessively stressed. So it's called overload. And that's happening no matter where you are on the spectrum of perfectly at ease in life to struggling deeply. Your body's navigating stress. Now, what I think is what I've come to develop is another phase of allostasis, but it's on the other end where you're at norm, but then you're breathing deeply and you're working out effectively, and you're maybe jumping in an ice bath or something to purposefully stimulate and strengthen your body to better adapt to stress around you. So I call that dynamic allostatic load or dynamic allostasis. And that's a way that, for me, I like to use breath. So I'm not just breathing for box breathing gentleness. I'm breathing for nervous system stimulation. I want to welcome stress into my body because purposeful stress creates growth. So I love that combination. And we see it a lot in like ecological dynamics in athletes and athletics. It's, hey, I'm going to put you in a situation that you kind of have to figure out how to get through. So put you in an environment, how to figure out, get through it. If you're allostatically loaded or overloaded, it's going to be hard to accomplish that task. So focus on your breath, focus on your allostasis to shift into dynamic performance in your sport.
I'm going to take a bit of a pivot. How do you think that community, like for example, a team, teammates, coaches, etc., can help redirect breath work?
How can help redirect breath work?
Redirect or reinforce, actually, either
Yeah.
one of those directions.
Yeah. So teams come in a lot of different shapes, sizes, chemistries. There's a lot of different philosophies and cultures can be focused on that mind body energy component. And then there's teams that are all about the grind. And some teams that are all about the grind reach the pinnacle of success and crush it. Some teams that are all about Zen, connection, unity hit the pinnacle and crush it. So there's not one that's positive or the other, but something about incorporating breathing, you can't go wrong. Even if you're grinding, you're gonna need to learn how to use your breath to support the grind and the recovery. And then if you're in that team chemistry type environment, the breath can unify, bring people together. You see a teammate breathing with presence, that might inspire you in the moment. Okay, I'm gonna get into the zone, right? You see someone who's in flow state, you're like, okay, good. I'm motivated by him. He's in the zone. Let me get in the zone. but I don't know how to get in the zone and I'm not there. Okay, breath will help you. Breath is the bridge again, not into mind and body, but it's the bridge to flow state.
How, as coaches, can you foster successful breathwork exercises within your teams?
Lead by example, right? So I can feel your nervous system just by being around you. I can feel if you're calm. You can give me a hyped up motivational speech, but if you don't believe it in yourself, I'm gonna sense that. And so if there's a disconnect between what you're saying and how you're showing up and how your nervous system's like feeling, like, hey, let's go, confidence, false confidence, we pick up on that because it's not felt in the body. So, one of the best tools that breathwork is used for is nervous system regulation. Your heart rate's going like crazy, you're kind of in some inner chaos. Can you slow down your mind and slow down your body and show up present? Now, that's a practice, and some people have it naturally. I see a lot of coaches, I know that they don't practice breath work. Absolutely. They don't practice meditation. That's not their thing. But they just have a natural way where they're breathing slow, they're breathing calm. But guess what? There's athletes who don't practice crazy maneuvers. I'm gonna say Barry Sanders comes to mind, football athlete. He just naturally gifted, naturally able to do some things. And then you look at Christian McCaffrey, he's also naturally gifted, but he's putting in work. He's watching video of Barry Sanders. He's putting in the grind to achieve the thing that someone has naturally. There's a lot of us who aren't as gifted as some, but we use them as that aspiration. There's also those who are like Kobe, Mamba mentality. They have that gift mentally, and we aspire towards that as well. So we can use breath again as a tool to help get us there, get us in the zone.
How can you use breath work to quell anxiety attacks, panic attacks,
That's
something
one of my,
very
yeah.
acute?
Mm-hmm. Anxiety and panic attacks are one of the biggest reasons that people reach out in the sports space and beyond. But um, that's one of the number one questions I get. Hey, how can I calm my nerves before a game? How can I uh, shift my focus whenever I'm losing my focus in a game? The answer that people want is not the answer that I give because that's not the true answer. It comes in the time before. It comes the day before. It comes 2, 3 days before. It's the practice that you put in consistently on your mental performance that will lead to a decrease in frequency of those panic type situations. So you're training your mind to not elevate into the panic because once you get into the panic, it's really hard to come back down. Like no breath technique is going to be able to fix that. So that's one we need to recognize. There is no magic technique that will help you in the moment get out of fight or flight crazy sensations. At that moment, your nervous system and your respiratory system is kind of like inflamed on fire. Your inflammatory system is like going. It takes time for that to build, approximately 4 hours to be exact. There's some research that shows when a panic attack happens, it actually starts 4 hours before. It's like a volcano. So there's some rumbling, some rumbling, some rumblings. If you don't have a connection to your body interoception, you're not going to notice the rumblings. Or maybe you feel them, but you don't put any intuition into those. So then you ignore it. You don't put any breath, and then you start to feel panic. You're like, oh crap, let me do my breath work. Shoot, the breath work's not working. It's probably not going to work because you should have been doing it prior. Now you can regulate, you can find ways to slow it down and calm. But if you don't work on it beforehand, you're working from behind. So there's a way. That's where the boring practice of breathing every day and finding a component of meditation as one of your like daily routines, maybe multiple times a day, is so important. And what we see in athletes is the basics are as important as the advanced practices. Top athletes They're going through the warm-ups and they're just doing the most boring warm up every day. But that's where it starts. And if you skip that, you're going to miss out on a really structural component of performance.
I was just drinking this latte I have next to me, and I was thinking about the impact of stimulants like caffeine, like this rise in energy drinks that we've been seeing recently on breath work. How do you see stimulants as impacting your ability to channel your breath?
Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's a deterrent and sometimes it's an amplifier, right? It depends on how much. They say toxicity is in the dose. So caffeine, coffee, if you're a coffee drinker, you just take a couple sips, you might become more present in the body. Then you drink a whole cup, 2 cups, 3 cups, or a can of energy drink, a couple sips, you're like, okay, cool, I'm present. I feel a little bit more connected. And then you drink the whole can, and all of a sudden your body is like, oh my gosh, I got a lot of stuff. What happens with the energy and the caffeine, your body has to process it. The act of processing that extra energy in the body requires energy from the body. So if you bring a lot of energy into the body has to navigate and balance the energy. That's allostatic load. Now you're creating more load for your body to navigate, which gives you a smaller window for performance. So it can deter. But in the example where you like an athlete that I was watching recently, he mentioned pregame warm up, Skittles and Nerds. That's a bunch of sugar, right? But he plays really good. It's like Marshawn Lynch. He loves Skittles during the game. It's a boost of energy, right? So sugar can be seen kind of like caffeine. It gives you a lot. But then you have a crash and then you have a dip. So how do you navigate those things? So you can control your breath to help influence your physiology. Um, but then whenever your nutrition is fueling your physiology, sometimes you can't breathe your way back into balance. So I can breathe myself into peace, presence, performance, meditation, but I didn't fuel myself properly. I'm fighting an uphill battle. I'm having to use my breath not to optimize performance. I'm having to use my breath to regulate that allostatic load to get to the next step of performance. So um, I wish I could just breathe myself into peace and presence. It doesn't always work, right? So you have to take care of all of the components, but use your breath mindfully in each of those situations.
How do you explain the impact of breath work to fast twitch athletes versus slow twitch athletes?
So fast twitch athletes, slow twitch athletes, it's very muscle based. It's like, how do you move physically? Um, I don't know if anyone listening could guess if I'm a fast twitch athlete or a slow twitch. I'm sure a lot of people could guess. What would you say?
I mean, you just mentioned that you like basketball and you play a bunch of sports. I would suggest, based on what I know about you, that they're team sports, which would also suggest that you are a quick twitch athlete.
Yeah. Did anything about like the way I talk and like move and think and
I mean, right
like that?
there, the shimmying of your
Yeah.
shoulders would suggest
Yeah.
quick twitch,
As
but
soon as
like,
you, yeah, yeah. I guess I led you. So I think of, well, one, it's totally physiological, fast twitch, slow twitch, but you can't separate the mind from the body. And I think fast twitch athletes, they're kind of like fast twitch movers, thinkers. Some would say, I have ADHD, right? Not to like identify with the thing, but my mind works fast twitch too. So in that case, I need maybe a little bit of a more engaging, faster, deeper, fast twitch kind of breathing practice to help match my energy to create that homeostasis, allostasis. Now, slow twitch, I wouldn't, again, we're just generalizing, but if I think about someone who's more slow twitch, they might be a little bit more cerebral. They're a little bit more observant. They're controlling the game in a different way because they don't have the ability to control the game and movement. They're controlling it with like strategy or foresight. And that's going to have to happen. So that's the mind body connection. So in that, what happens? Breath probably a little bit more slow, deep, increase lung capacity. You can run longer. You can probably run longer because you're going to have to run longer. I'm going to sprint and hit my capacity, and I'll have to shift into recovery breath, and then rabbit versus the hare. Dude just keeps cruising past me. Then I'll catch up, and he just keeps going. So, situational breathing. Once again, how are you breathing to match not just the situation, but your environment, your internal environment, your makeup? Introspection, feeling in your body, helps introspection, understanding yourself deeper, so you can shift breath to match who you are. My breath techniques that work for me completely different than what would work for you or anyone else. So anytime I see someone advocate for a technique and say, hey, this is the best technique, I've been doing this for years, guess what? Completely different, because you're a different person, different body, different mind, different twitch.
I I don't often, but I have had a few ultra marathoners on this podcast, and from a mental perspective, from a physical perspective, they're just monsters. From a mental perspective, they view competition in a different way than I've ever heard anyone address. But from a breathwork perspective, how do you see those prolonged distances, that prolonged focus impacting breath work?
So ultra marathon runners are a unique breed, as you would say, and so is every unique breed. But like you said, they're very competitive. They're very self-driven. So the breath is used with an intention to satisfy that goal. So they're going to be hyper aware of their breath because they know that every breath is fueling them towards long-term success, long distance success. So they're hyper focused on breath to self motivate. For me, less of a long distance runner. I've never ran a marathon. I don't think I ever will. I don't see a reason why I would. I don't have an interest in that. I could. I bet I could run a marathon tomorrow without training and be fine and do a fairly decent job. Probably because I trained my breathing. So it's all about now. But I would definitely struggle, but I would make it. Um, but with the intention, again, that's your chemistry, that's your makeup, that's your psychological makeup. The long distance ultra marathoners are breathing for a completely, they're breathing for the same reason, energy, performance, but they're breathing from a different place, like a different reason, intention. So it's a good question.
I, speaking of like acute breathing versus prolonged breathing, I, years and years ago, I was watching a YouTube channel called Yes Theory. Do you know Yes
Mm-hmm.
Theory?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I love their content. I love their storytelling. But I came across the episode they did on the Wim Hof breathing method, and I was fascinated by it. At that time, that was my kind of introduction to Wim Hof breathing. And when I came across you and saw that you had an experience with Wim Hof, I was like, oh, I have to ask him about this because it was it was a mindset and a framing of the impact of breath work that I really had never come across before. What is your experience with Wim Hof
Mm-hmm.
and where did that begin?
So my breath journey began listening to a Wim Hof podcast in 2016. So that's 10 years ago now. Um, and I heard Wim Hof. And for those who don't know Wim Hof, one, look him up, WIMHOF. Uh, but two, a quick synopsis is he is from the Netherlands. He's this old bearded man. They call him the Iceman. He's the dude who just jumps into ice baths, just hiked Everest in his shorts and no shirt kind of thing. And the reason why everyone is jumping in ice baths, or an aunt, uncle, cousin, friend that is obsessed with ice, it's from Wim Hof. So he's the father of ice bath. But with his ice bath fascination came a bright breathing technique that I mentioned earlier. It's 30 breaths, strong, deep, fast with an exhale hold. You can find a ton of audio. There's the Wim Hof app, so you can download the app and follow his technique. I love his technique. Do I practice his technique every day? No. Do I practice it a couple times a week? Yes. Do I practice my own version of it that is not the same as what he teaches? Yes, because his teaching doesn't really, I'm like, I can tweak it to make it work better for me. So my Wim Hof practice is different than what you'd find on the app, but that comes from personal practice, etc. So, um, but when I heard Wim Hof speak for the first time, he was excited. He was high on life. He was happy. He was exuberant, and he was not fake. He wasn't fake. Like, you know how you hear people say, like, oh, everything's great. I love life. And you can tell, like, again, that incongruency of people. You're like, are you sure? Hey, everything's great. Two thumbs up. But then you're like, are you? I don't know. He seemed like he felt so authentically excited. And he's like, it's the breath. The breath gives you life. The breath is oxygen. It is life. It is where you create energy and connection to source. And just hearing that really opened my eyes to the fact that breath and spirit are synonymous. The ancient Greeks called breath spiritus. They called spirit spiritus. It was one and the same. It was actually pneuma, and pneuma is Greek, and then Latin was spiritus, spiritus. So ancient civilizations saw breath was life, and we've lost that. But Wim Hof brought that back for me, and you can see it and feel it. And so um, I got into the Wim Hof method, started practicing it every day. It was invigorating and gave me that sense of life. I felt like I had a superpower. I'd tell my friends about it, and they'd be like, "You're crazy." So there weren't very many other crazy people back in 2016. So I was just like, why aren't more people breathing? Like, this is amazing. And I'd try to tell people, breathe. And they'd be like, you're going crazy. So, but it put me on the right path of understanding that what I actually think happened is the better I breathe, the more conscious of my breathing, I literally changed my brain. I changed my brain from thinking to breathing to feeling to being more present to being less stressed. So I went through a personal neurophysiological transformation, quite literally. I would guarantee my brain before breath to my brain after breath. You put them, it'd be completely different. Electron firing, neurons firing, etc. So he has literally changed my life. He's changed a lot of lives. And I was fortunate to go to Iceland and do a retreat where I jumped into cold water out in nature and did tons of breath work. And it was just best experience ever.
Let's talk the intersection of breath work and cold exposure therapy.
Mm-hmm. So cold and breath go hand in hand, and yet you can do them separate, right? So I don't always practice breath work before I get into cold water. I did a cold plunge this morning, and I didn't do any breathing. I just saw it. I was like, okay, got to get in. I'm not going to waste time breathing. I'm just going to do it. So I got in and just regulated and breathed a little bit while I was in there, but just normal. Some days, I'm like, okay, I need actual breath. I need to focus. I need to ground. I need to move energy purposefully to get my mind right, to get the most out of my cold exposure experience. What you don't want to do is do deep breathing while in the water. It's dangerous. Quite literally, people have had bad experiences, costly experiences from doing breath work, because sometimes breath work can elicit fainting. And if you faint in water, you drown. And it is quite serious. And people have lost their lives over the last many years since Wim Hof's become popular because they get high on their own supply. They feel great. And they're out in nature by themselves. Everything is so peaceful. But then they like hold their breath maybe too long and pass out and they drown. So people have lost their lives. be mindful when you're breathing. But that's on the extreme end of like deep, 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 pushing yourself to the limit. Just be around the right people and practice with a coach. But besides that, like if you take the extreme down a notch, peak performance, that's where you get the benefits of cold exposure, uh, norepinephrine, adrenaline rises. There's a really popular influencer who like runs with his shirt off. He puts his face in the bowl of ice water to get what's called the mammalian dive reflex. It just turns on all of the energy of your body. He comes out and he just sprints, and he's jacked. So there's this pre-workout, and I do practice breath work and ice bath prior to working out. It's my pre-workout. I'd use that instead of an energy drink because it's more natural. Gets your body prepped for movement because you literally are putting yourself into a fight or flight state. So I could talk a ton about ice, but I'll just tee it up there.
How can you use breath work to monitor your potential? Essentially, how much more you have to give of a training, an exercise,
I
etc.
heard this quote recently in the breath world by a breathing breath running coach. Um, said connecting to your respiratory rate, so the amount of breaths per minute, respiratory rate, will help you understand your rating of perceived exertion. So RPE, common in the sports performance world, exercise physiology world. Run as fast as you can, as long as you can, until you can't anymore. You're at your highest rating of perceived exertion. Sitting, doing nothing, low, like you're not exerting anything, and you can perceive that you're not doing it. Respiratory rate kind of follows that trend. The faster you go, the more you're moving, the faster you're going to breathe. So if you're breathing fast, you're likely in a higher respiratory or higher perceived exertion. Now, often people are just sitting doing nothing and they're breathing fast. So the respiratory rate is high. You shouldn't really have to breathe fast when you're doing nothing. But where would that fast breathing come from and why? Stress, unconscious stress. You're holding on to stuff. You're not connected. So that's that disconnect from mind body. And that's where breathwork is very powerful, is just lowering that respiratory rate so you can match your environment. Because if your perceived exertion, you've gone on a walk or you've done a workout with someone where you're running sprints and they're mentally out. They're like, they can't do it. I'm done. I don't have any more in me. And you're like, come on, let's go. Let's push it, push it. And you're like, I could do this for like 5 more reps. They're done. Right. They end up doing it anyway. So they had the capacity, but their perceived exertion was super high. Based on this quote, which I believe in, their respiratory rate was likely also high. So they're breathing fast, probably excessively fast, not as much as they need. So there's like an appropriate respiratory rate. But if you're breathing excessively, then that's going to kind of fire off your brain. Oh, I got chaos is going up. There's too much, too fast. So your perception goes up, your exertion goes up, and then your respiratory rate goes up. So how do you combat that? You train the body to breathe slower, deeper, and more wide, more slow, more controlled.
How do you master your nervous system response in those moments of chaos, but also in the calm?
So the nervous system follows in line with your breathing and your respiratory system, like I mentioned. Fight or flight is sympathetic, rest and digest, calm, relaxed. Recovery, rejuvenation, that's parasympathetic. And so um, I believe that the ratio should be about 85% of the day, you should be in calm with little moments of fast react, energize, and then come back down. Even in sports, like in maybe a 45-minute half of soccer, a lot of guys are just running, they're pacing, boom, and they're attacking. And they're slowing it down. So they're being adaptable to the situation. There's trying you want your goal is to be as calm in your nervous system as possible, as long and as much as possible until you need to act. But what happens with stress, untrained nervous system, lack of awareness of your nervous system, a lot of us are just like chronically stressed. We're a little bit more sympathetic. We're holding on to energy. Maybe we know we are, but we don't know how to turn it down. I can teach you that. Don't know how to turn it down physiologically, nervous system wise. So then you're exhausting a little bit more energy and you can make your sprints and do your things. But then by the time 70 minutes comes in the game and you got 20 minutes left, you're just toast and you're done. You're not even in calm. You're like in deep, uh, can't do anything anymore state. So that's nervous system because whenever your body's stressed, sympathetic, your heart rate's beating faster, your respiratory is going faster. The more you beat, the more you breathe, the more energy you need. So if you're allocating energy towards that allostatic load, allostatic overload, then you're not holding and retaining energy for performance. I'm just redundant. See how it's the same thing? Every question, it's the same answer. But that's why breath is so important. That's why the principles of breath are so important because you really got to focus in, harness in, recognize the importance. And everyone hears this and they're like, okay, I breathe all the time, you know. But it's those who actually take this into practice that realize, oh, it's the simplest thing, but the most important and effective thing. So
I mean, why was it so important to you to share that message on, say, a TED Talk?
yeah. So I was blessed to do a TED Talk last fall. Um, I was invited to speak, so often people apply. But the director of the TED Talk for me was in the local area and had been to one of my breathwork classes, and she was like, "Oh my God!" So she had that eye-opening experience that many have. So I was invited to talk and embrace that opportunity. And I'm passionate about breath because it changed my life and it's changed. I've been able to help so many people with their breathing and help them change their lives. And the amount of people who come to me and say, thank you, unconscious of breathing. Like I never thought about breath in like 5 years. And now it makes sense. They're not obsessively thinking about their breathing, but they're realizing, okay, I need to take a big breath now. And now I know how. So one is the reminder, like you mentioned, how do you remember to breathe? Takes a little bit to remember. Um, but what do you do once you remember to breathe? Most people, okay, I remember to breathe. Here's a breath, but it's not a very good breath. So you need to understand one, I need to remind yourself to breathe. But two, how do you take a really good breath? There are normal breaths that most people take that aren't very good, and there's optimal breaths. And to find that out, you gotta follow me, and I'll share that on the DL. That's the secret sauce that you get with my coaching.
Shameless plug.
Yep.
Those are all the questions I have for you. Is there anything else that you'd like to share free of charge? Anything
No.
that I think you think that I missed about kind of painting the picture of you and the work that you do, breath work
Mm-hmm.
as an entity, and how
Mm-hmm.
to capitalize on what we all do unconsciously every day.
I have a mission to inspire everyone to breathe. Breath is free. It's accessible. There are so many programs and things that will cost crazy amounts of money. But if I can just help people realize they need to breathe better and they can do that, that's amazing. But like I said, there are people who want more. They have a toolbox and they're like, hey, what's underneath? Like what's in there? Like there's a bottomless pit of information that we can explore. And that's where I think breathwork and mental performance blend together beautifully because breathwork by itself, it's got good capacity for learning. But then breathwork with mental performance, how does your breath tie into your psyche and thinking and self-talk? And how can you use breath to improve that or improve neuroplasticity? That's that's where I really like to work with individuals, teams. So breath, hey, breathe, reminder, here's how you breathe better, this and that. But how do you blend breath into your life, your performance, what you're trying to do, your specific goal. You're struggling in a certain area. How can we breathe to navigate that psyche component and improve mental performance? That's what I do at Allostasis Performance. So that's my business, Allostasis Performance. I also have another business, which is True Self Health. True Self Health is more physical therapy, general population type stuff. Allostasis Performance is made more for athletes, for coaches, for teams, for organizations, really trying to up their whole level. So I've recently developed Allostasis Performance to really sharpen that niche. And grateful to share this with you and be on your show. And nice to meet you. And this is great.
You too. I don't have a ton of breathwork specific guests. The the majority of my guests are current former athletes, coaches, sports psychologists, nutritionists. Um, I think it's so important to have support staff though, especially in breathwork, which is so applicable to those of my listeners who are athletes and also those who are not. Um, so thank you for coming on. Thanks for kind
Yeah.
of working through this. I mean, it's the takeaways from this episode are really important, I think. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome and happy to be a part of the ecosystem and
Yeah.
network. And I like teaching the teachers as much as the athletes, right? Because if I can help a coach, and I've worked with a ton of coaches, and they're like, "Cool, I use these techniques." Like you don't have to be a breath nerd like me, as you may have learned and listened. I'm out there. I told you I'm in the breath world, and not a lot of people are in there, but the water's good. But yeah, again, this is awesome. Happy to share it. Great to meet you, and
Thank you.
looking forward to seeing how this all comes together.